In 1987, a young bride vanished without a trace during her honeymoon in Sicily. Her name was Maria Racco. She had married Domenico Racco, a man who appeared charming on the surface but hid a dark secret. He was one of Italy's most feared mafia bosses. Rumors spread like wildfire that Maria met a horrifying end at the hands of her own husband. Witnesses claimed she was fed to his vicious guard dogs after uncovering his criminal empire. But what drove him to commit such an unspeakable act? And how did fate ensure he paid for his crimes? What secrets did Maria discover that sealed her tragic fate? Maria Racco wasn't born into a world of crime. She grew up in Palermo, Sicily, a city known for its rich history and dangerous underbelly. But Maria didn't see herself as part of that shadowy side. She was a schoolteacher with dreams bigger than her small-town roots. Friends remember her as someone who lit up every room she entered, kind-hearted, fiercely independent, and always ready to help others. Maria dreamed of adventure. She wanted to travel the world, write stories about faraway places, and build a life full of love and purpose. When she met Domenico Racco at a local festival, it seemed like fate had finally smiled on her. He was handsome, wealthy, and promised her everything she'd ever wanted: a luxurious life, excitement, and romance. At first glance, Domenico appeared to be the perfect partner. To outsiders, their whirlwind romance looked like something out of a fairy tale. But those closest to Maria noticed cracks beneath the surface. Late-night phone calls he refused to explain. Sudden disappearances without warning. And his temper, quick to flare when things didn't go his way. One friend warned Maria not to trust him too quickly. "He's hiding something," they said. Another mentioned rumors linking him to violent men in the area. But Maria brushed them off. She believed love could change anyone, even a man like Domenico. But how long could she ignore the signs before reality came crashing down? To understand Maria's tragic fate, we must first look at the man she married, Domenico Racco. On the surface, he was a successful businessman with an air of charm and sophistication. He owned properties across Sicily, hosted lavish parties, and moved in elite circles. But behind closed doors, Domenico ruled one of the most ruthless crime families in southern Italy. Domenico wasn't just involved in petty crimes. He orchestrated drug trafficking rings, extortion schemes, and illegal gambling operations that stretched far beyond Sicily. His name struck fear into anyone who crossed him. Those who dared oppose him often disappeared, or worse. Yet, to Maria, he presented himself as her ticket to a better life, a protector, not a predator. Despite warnings from friends and family, Maria chose to believe in the man she thought she knew. She convinced herself that his occasional absences and secretive behavior were simply part of running a demanding business. After all, Domenico showered her with gifts, promises of adventure, and declarations of love. For Maria, it felt like a dream come true. Their wedding day was nothing short of extravagant. Held in a grand villa overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, it drew hundreds of guests, many of whom whispered behind closed doors about Domenico's reputation. One guest later recalled seeing Maria's nervous smile during the ceremony. She looked happy, they said, but there was something uneasy in her eyes. By the time they left for their honeymoon in Taormina, a picturesque town on Sicily's eastern coast, their relationship already showed signs of strain. Maria had begun noticing inconsistencies in Domenico's stories. Why did he avoid certain topics? Who were the men calling him late at night? And why did he insist on staying in such a remote villa instead of a bustling tourist area? It was during this trip that Maria stumbled upon something she wasn't meant to see, a hidden ledger tucked away in a locked drawer. The pages detailed transactions, names, and operations tied to Domenico's criminal empire. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. But as the pieces came together, panic set in. She realized the man she loved was capable of unimaginable cruelty, and now, she knew too much. What would Maria do with this dangerous knowledge? And more importantly, how far would Domenico go to protect his secrets? As Maria flipped through the pages of that hidden ledger, her world began to unravel. Names, dates, and amounts, none of it made sense at first. But then she saw something unmistakable, a payment marked Silenzio Permanente. Permanent silence. It was code for murder, a phrase whispered only in the darkest corners of Domenico's world. Suddenly, everything clicked. The late-night calls, his sudden disappearances, the way he flared up over small things. He wasn't just dangerous, he was deadly. Maria tried to convince herself it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe the ledger belonged to someone else. Maybe Domenico had no idea it was there. But deep down, she knew the truth. And worse, she feared what would happen if he found out she'd seen it. Over the next few days, Maria became increasingly withdrawn. She stopped sleeping, jumping at every sound outside their villa. During one tense dinner, she subtly probed Domenico about his business dealings, testing how much he might reveal. His response sent chills down her spine. "You don't need to worry about these things," he said coldly. "Just trust me." Trust him? How could she trust a man who lived by lies? Unbeknownst to Maria, she wasn't alone in noticing the danger around her. A young maid working at the villa, Lucia, had grown suspicious of Domenico's frequent visits from shadowy men. One evening, while cleaning Maria's room, Lucia slipped her a note written hastily in Italian, "Fuggi finch puoi." Escape while you can. But before Maria could ask what she meant, Lucia vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispers among the staff about her abrupt departure. Desperate for answers and safety, Maria decided to act. She snuck out of the villa under the cover of darkness, hoping to reach a nearby cafe where she could call a trusted friend back home. But when she arrived, the phone line was dead. Coincidence? Or had Domenico anticipated her move? Panic set in as she realized just how isolated they were. The villa sat miles away from town, surrounded by dense woods and steep cliffs. There was nowhere to run. In a moment of desperation, Maria contemplated confronting him head-on. Perhaps if she appealed to whatever shred of humanity he still possessed, he'd let her go. That night, she waited until he returned from one of his mysterious meetings. Her hands trembled as she held the ledger open on the table. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking but firm. For a brief second, Domenico looked surprised, but quickly masked it with anger. "Where did you find that?" he growled, stepping closer. Maria took a step back, realizing too late that she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. The argument escalated into screams, echoing through the empty halls of the villa. Then came silence. What happened next would haunt those who heard the story for years to come, but not because anyone witnessed it firsthand. Because no one ever saw Maria Racco again. The night Maria confronted Domenico marked the beginning of her end. Witnesses later recounted hearing screams coming from the villa, sharp, piercing cries that echoed through the otherwise silent countryside. Then, silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that seemed to stretch on forever. What happened inside those walls remains shrouded in mystery, but fragments of evidence paint a chilling picture. According to one account, Domenico unleashed his vicious guard dogs, animals trained not just to protect but to attack on command. Neighbors claimed they heard growls and snarls mixed with Maria's desperate pleas for mercy. By morning, there was no trace of her left behind. When authorities were eventually called to the scene weeks later, after rumors spread among locals about Maria's disappearance, they found disturbing clues scattered around the property. Bloodstains marred the marble floors of the villa, though Domenico insisted they came from a hunting accident. Torn fabric, matching Maria's clothing, was discovered near the kennels where the dogs were kept. And then there was the ledger, the very document that had sealed Maria's fate, carefully hidden once again, as if Domenico knew it held the key to unraveling his crimes. A former associate of Domenico's, who spoke anonymously years later, revealed a haunting detail. He bragged about how he dealt with loose ends, the source said. He called it feeding the wolves. Whether literal or metaphorical, the phrase sent chills down investigators' spines. Another villager recalled seeing the dogs acting strangely aggressive in the days following Maria's disappearance, their fur matted and eyes wild, as if they'd been involved in something unspeakable. In a cruel twist of fate, it wasn't only Maria who suffered. Days after she vanished, Lucia, the maid who had warned Maria to escape, was found dead in a shallow grave outside town. Authorities ruled it an accident, citing a fall from the cliffs. But those who knew her suspected otherwise. Had she paid the ultimate price for trying to help? For now, Domenico appeared untouchable. He covered his tracks meticulously, using fear and intimidation to silence anyone who dared speak out. But even the most powerful men can't outrun justice or karma. Unbeknownst to him, forces were already at work, plotting his downfall. The question wasn't if he'd pay for his crimes, but when. Domenico Racco may have thought he'd silenced Maria forever, but karma has a way of finding even the most ruthless men. It started subtly, a whisper here, a rumor there. Locals who once feared him began to talk. Some claimed they saw shadows moving near the villa at night, as if Maria's spirit lingered, watching and waiting. Others swore the dogs grew restless, pacing endlessly as though haunted by what they'd done. But it wasn't ghosts that brought Domenico down, it was betrayal from within his own ranks. One of his closest lieutenants, Enzo Russo, had grown tired of living under Domenico's iron fist. When Italian authorities launched an investigation into organized crime in Sicily, Enzo saw his chance. In exchange for immunity, he spilled secrets, names, operations, locations, all leading straight back to Domenico. Among the evidence, the ledger Maria had uncovered, now in police hands after being recovered during a raid on one of Domenico's properties. The arrest came swiftly. Early one morning, armed officers stormed the villa where Maria's screams had once echoed. Domenico fought back, shouting threats and promises of retaliation, but this time, no one listened. As handcuffs clicked into place, neighbors reported hearing laughter from inside the house. Whether it belonged to an officer or simply the wind, no one could say. But many believed it was justice finally stepping through the door. Domenico's trial captivated Italy. Survivors of his crimes came forward, recounting years of extortion, violence, and fear. Photos of Maria were plastered across newspapers, her smiling face a stark contrast to the horrors she endured. Though her body was never found, prosecutors argued that the bloodstains and torn fabric tied to the kennels proved her fate beyond doubt. Witnesses recounted chilling details about Domenico's temper and obsession with control. Even some of his former allies testified against him, sealing his fate. During sentencing, a surprise witness took the stand, a childhood friend of Maria's named Rosa. She held up a painting Maria had created years earlier, depicting two figures standing hand in hand beneath a bright sun. "This is who Maria was," Rosa said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Not a victim, but a woman full of hope and light. And today, we honor her memory by ensuring her killer faces the truth." The courtroom erupted in applause as Domenico sat stone-faced, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. In the end, Domenico Racco was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Stripped of his wealth, power, and freedom, he spent his final years isolated in a maximum security facility. Guards claimed he often muttered Maria's name in his sleep, waking in cold sweats. Was it guilt? Fear? Or something darker still haunting him? We'll never know for sure. What we do know is that justice, though delayed, was served. As for Maria, her story lives on, not just as a tragedy, but as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, the truth has a way of surfacing. Her disappearance remains unsolved in official records, but those who loved her believe she found peace. Perhaps karma doesn't always answer our questions, but it ensures no act goes unpunished. Maria Racco's story is more than just a chilling tale of betrayal and revenge. It's a stark reminder of the dangers lurking behind closed doors. Her tragic fate highlights the devastating consequences of abusive relationships, where love can quickly turn into control, manipulation, and violence. But it also shines a light on broader societal issues that demand our attention. How could someone like Domenico Racco operate unchecked for so long? The answer lies in fear. Fear of retaliation, fear of speaking out, fear of not being believed. Maria tried to escape, but she was isolated, cut off from support systems that might have saved her. This case raises critical questions about how we protect victims of domestic abuse and organized crime. Are we doing enough to ensure people feel safe coming forward? Or are we allowing predators like Domenico to exploit gaps in the system? In the years following Maria's disappearance, activists in Sicily began pushing for reforms to combat organized crime and support survivors of abuse. One group, inspired by Maria's story, launched a campaign called Voices Unsilenced, aimed at providing resources and safe spaces for women trapped in dangerous situations. Their message was simple yet powerful: no one should face their fears alone. Maria may be gone, but her memory lives on through those who refuse to let her death be in vain. Her courage, however fleeting, reminds us all that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, there is hope. Hope for justice, hope for change, and hope that future generations will inherit a world where no one has to endure what Maria did. If this story resonated with you, I urge you to take a moment to reflect on its lessons. What warning signs might you recognize in your own life or the lives of those around you? How can you help create a safer, more supportive community? Share this video with friends and family. It's time we break the silence surrounding abuse and hold perpetrators accountable. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to our channel. Together, we can shine a light on stories like Maria's, honor the victims, and push for meaningful change. Hit that like button, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and join the conversation. Because every voice matters, and together, we can make sure tragedies like this never happen again.